2, 1.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are pleased to be joined by Chris Trapasso, founder of Scouting Gradebook. He is with CBS Sports, NFL draft writer, young player analyst, and more. He has a podcast. We'll get into all this with him. And
native Western New Yorker.
Native. That was the next big thing, right?
Now, yeah. Chris, I'm going to interrupt Don here for a second.
Oh, I'm done.
I'm gonna ask you to grade or to scout yourself as a young writer. What was young Chris Trapasso like, and what kind of a grade would you have?
Yeah, not crazy high to start. Probably day 3 range, 6th, 7th round, somewhere in there. But my mom always told me to just never really say that you're an aspiring writer. You're either a writer or you're not a writer. So and with that, she always told me to just keep writing. Like whether it was writing about just the Bills or the entire NFL. There was a little period, which we can certainly get to later on, that I wasn't employed by any website writing about football. And I literally just opened a Google document, like a blank Google page. And it was during free agency. I don't remember what year. I want to say 2014 or 2015. And I just literally titled it Chris Trapasso's Free Agent Writer Blog. And I would just react to free agent signings, everything happening with the draft that year. So I just have really chipped away at it. And hopefully I've been that long-term project type player that you pick in the 7th round and has become, at least a solid contributor to CBS Sports.
Yeah, back to your mother, I'm sure it sounds like you heed her wisdom. Mm-hmm. Was it, why did she not want you to say aspiring writer, only that it might suggest that you're not there yet? Like if you're writing, you're writing. Is that it?
It was kind of, I think, a way to boost my confidence early on, because even when I started 2008, 2009, when I was in college writing for Bleacher Report and a few other sites, it always kind of felt like, oh, you're just an amateur writer. And a lot of times I wasn't getting paid or very little to start. That I think it was just to really boost my confidence and to just say, hey, look, if you're writing, you're a writer, and to pitch yourself as that and believe in yourself. And again, just write as much as you can. And that's the only way to get better at, being a writer and understanding different avenues with free agency and with the draft and with team building and with coaching hires, to just kind of dip my toes into all aspects so I could be somewhat of a valuable commodity at any point of the NFL calendar, which we know is really only off in the month of June. And besides that, there's always something to be writing about. So I kind of took those two kind of pillars of what she told me and a few others. And I had an uncle who kind of gave me similar advice to just keep my foot on the gas. And that's really what I've done in my career.
Nice. That's good advice. That's good advice from your mom. I found, I think some of your early work from 2012 saying that you love the Bills, you love writing, and you were a David Nelson jersey owner. And that prompted Don to go back in his Rolodex, and we're gonna have David Nelson kind of join us on the show maybe in the next month or so. Cool. So going way back, you said you grew up in Medina. For people that are listening that are not in the area, it's a suburb of Buffalo, probably about 45 minutes from the stadium. Where'd the love of football come from? Did you play? Were you one of those guys that didn't play but just loved the Bills? Did you love just football in general? How'd you start?
So it's probably a pretty similar story to most people, that my dad and just my whole family, just a huge Bills fan family. My dad has been a season ticket holder. I'm kind of feeling like I'm bragging here, but I'm bragging for my dad that he's been a season ticket holder since Rich Stadium opened in 1973. So I kind of had no choice. I was just born into it. It just seemed like that's what you had to be. And so I wanted to play football growing up, but I'm 5'9", 5'8", 5'9", 170 pounds. And so I was never quite big enough. And my mom, even back then, not that we knew anything about or as much about concussions as we do today, she just did not want me to get hurt. She's like, you're too little. So I ultimately played golf in the fall, and it kind of worked out because I still love playing golf, but didn't have any injuries, don't have any lingering effects from any football injuries. But just with my dad being a season ticket holder, my uncles, being at Super Bowls in the 90s, that's kind of where it stemmed from, that it was such a religious-esque experience in my house every Sunday. So I'm sure like you guys, most of your listeners, that's kind of how I started. It's just kind of been passed down throughout the generations in my family.
Yeah, funny story. Years ago, it was 2007, and I was with the team, so we had 2 tickets. And for some reason, my family went, but for some reason they couldn't go. It was the home opener, so I gave them to a young man in our family on our street, and his father to go. Similar to that, he was playing football. His mom didn't want him to play football. Against his her better wishes, he did, and they went to the game, and it happened to be the game that Kevin Everett. Yeah, and so they were on the way home, and she was like, "How was the game?" And she's a gardener; she couldn't care less about football. And Tom said, "Oh, it was fun, good time." She goes, "Well, what about that young man that got hurt?" And they pretended that they never saw it, and she was like, "There was an ambulance on the field for a half an hour. I saw it. I told you football was dangerous." But he's still playing.
Yeah, there you go. You might want to reframe that, not quite as a funny story, but an ironic story.
True, ironic. Yeah, let's say okay. Yeah, there's that.
Right, so we've had a number of guys from Western New York on, like you said, kind of a similar background story. I grew up here. Don grew up in the Adirondacks, but
Nice.
The Bills were religion, right? My 4 high school years were the 4 Super Bowl years. So you had no choice. You love the team, whatever. When did you decide to take that next step into, was it in writing in general? Was it always going to be sports writing? Was it always going to be the Bills?
No, it really wasn't. It was more just sports in general. I mean, I played golf from when I was a kid all the way through high school. Played baseball, played basketball. So I loved sports. And then when it came time to pick a college or decide what I was going to do after high school, it wasn't, hey, I need to be a sports writer. And I'm kind of kicking myself now that I didn't realize that that's what I wanted to do earlier. But I knew that I wanted to go somewhere that had at least a sports management degree. And that was kind of a new degree in like the mid 2000s when I went to school. Went to Valparaiso University in Indiana, which is just ironically and just kind of randomly where my dad went in the late 60s, early 70s. So he kind of pushed us in that direction. They had sports management. And then it was at Valparaiso, my second year in, that I realized that I didn't want to sell tickets. I wanted to be closer to the game than being in a ticket office or a marketing department. And actually my twin sister, who also went there with me, she started writing for the newspaper there, like not about sports, just other things. And I thought, oh, I could be a sports writer. That'd be kind of fun. So I kind of dipped my toes into the sports writing realm then. And then that was right around and kind of coincided with the inception of the site Bleacher Report, where certainly less stringent of an application process than they probably have now to become a writer. They were looking for writers, and they certainly were looking for Bills writers. So I thought this was like a dream come true for me. And again, early on, wasn't getting paid, and then incrementally started to get some money. But that's kind of the genesis of becoming a sports writer. It wasn't always that I loved writing. I was like any other kid in high school that hated when a English teacher would say, hey, this needs to be 5 pages long or 1,000 words. But then once I was writing about something that I was really passionate about and had a vested interest in, I could, certainly write something that would be 5 pages long and not even think anything of it.
Was the Valparaiso? Were you there? Like, was that the Bryce Drew era?
It was after. So it's funny. It was.
I just wrote that down. I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah, it was after. So after Bryce Drew, about 10 years after. But
year
it's
was that?
funny. So Bryce Drew was there like in the mid to late night, like 94 to 97, I want to say.
Okay.
And I was there like 10 years later from 06 to 2010. But what I will say, that shot and those teams were so good. And his dad being the coach there, like that is still like a legendary thing in Valparaiso. They show the shot a lot. They have the banners hanging up. So it's definitely like a basketball town because Indiana is just very pro basketball in general, which was actually good because so many of the kids that were either doing radio shows or writing in the newspaper there, like wanted to write about college basketball or NBA basketball. And I would kind of pitch to editors and to the producer of the radio station. They're like, hey, can I like write an NFL column? And can I do like a pregame on Sunday morning NFL show? And they're like, yeah, we don't really have anyone that's that into it. Not that there's not Bears fans locally, because it's kind of by Chicago and obviously the Indianapolis Colts, but there was just room for me to be able to do those things. Fun experience and just a good experience to learn, how to write articles and to hold an audience on the radio.
That's really interesting. It's funny. Valparaiso, obviously, even 25. I didn't realize it was that long ago.
Me neither.
But that's the first thing you think of is Bryce Drew. So you said that Bill's content was something that they were looking for. Now there's a million podcasts. There's a million. There's so much Bill's content.
Yeah.
What was the landscape like in 2007, 2008 during the middle of the drought? Was it tough to kind of break through with Bill's stuff? Did anybody nationally care?
Not as much, for sure. I will say though, and this kind of speaks to like both of you, like growing up, understanding how important the Bills were to the area, even though the Bills were not very good or kind of mediocre at best, I still think the time, like with Pat Moran had a site called Buffalo Sports Daily. He's doing his big thing now with Talking Buffalo. I still think there was a lot of passion from Bills fans starting blogs and websites in terms of getting picked up nationally, or even saying, hey, like, we need you to write about this big Bills game that just didn't really exist. There was that long stretch where the Bills didn't have a home primetime game from 94 to that Cowboys game in 2008. So it was definitely tough sledding to get noticed compared to if you were writing about a team that was a perennial playoff contender then. But again, it was just the team that I grew up loving and I cared the most about. So I figured, hey, look, they're still in the NFL. At the time, there were some questions about if they were going to move to Toronto or somewhere else. Glad they didn't, obviously. But yeah, that's a good question. It was definitely a little bit more challenging to, whether it be just an opinion on Twitter or, hey, I spent all this time in this article on who the Bills should draft at quarterback, to get those to get the attention that a lot of other teams were getting at that time.
Sure. So was your goal always, because we've had a number of guys on who just wanted to be a part of the NFL. I majored in sport management at Medaille back in the late 90s, and that's how I met Don and got the internship in the marketing department, and away we went. But was it always the Bills, or would you have taken a beat writer job with any NFL team, or was your goal always to come home and cover the Bills?
So that's a good question. Like, I think if after college, and I did apply for a few writer jobs with newspapers outside of Buffalo, I didn't get any of them. I think at 22 with, not really any other responsibilities at the time. Yeah. Like, I would have taken a job in Philadelphia or Green Bay or something, but I always kind of wanted to get back to Buffalo. However, since I've been back and I've been fortunate enough to have writing and analyst jobs in the industry, I've kind of purposely made it one of my missions to not solely just be hyper specific about the Bills, and to follow the entire NFL, know as much as I could about the entire league, about the draft, about free agency. And certainly I know the Bills best, and that's why I'm on this podcast. I've done stuff with Pat Moran, all the other Cover One guys, and I always jump at those opportunities because I just love to kind of promote and to be part of what I think is a great kind of blogosphere and podcast platform that so many Bills fans and analysts have from Western New York. But I didn't want to just pigeonhole myself to say, hey, look, I can only really write about the Bills, or, be on a podcast about the Bills. So that's kind of like one way I wanted to be centered around Buffalo or in Buffalo, but I also didn't want to just only be able to give opinions and give my analysis about the Bills.
How do you feel about sports betting, and do you ever feel pressure, or do people when people broach that with you, trying to get your professional opinion, is it something you give the Heisman to, or do you do you lend? It's so prominent now, and I always feel bad when writers get put on the spot as if they have some inside knowledge that that's another really good question too. It's certainly become part of the industry that you can't ignore, and I think you're silly to ignore it. But I do think it's one thing to be like I am and be a analyst that's writing about scouting reports for college players, team building philosophies, and then just being a sports betting analyst or writer and understanding trends and looking at where the line is moved throughout the week. Like, that's not really where I'm at. I think personally, for as much fun as betting on a game or a player prop can be to just add to the excitement of the game, and maybe this is I'm just kind of like an old soul. I just like football in general. Like, I don't need to have, even if it's
even if it's a Raiders Broncos Monday night game, I don't need to have the extra boost of adrenaline to say, hey, I have $50 riding on this game too. And I think in general, Vegas ultimately always wins. So I think when a lot of my friends that will occasionally reach out and say, hey, what do you think about this spread? Or why did this line go down? What do you think? Like, I'll give them just what I think about the game. But I always say, like, guys, like I would probably not bet long-term, because unless you have the willpower to pull that money out, which I think is very hard just for humans to do. It's obviously not the smartest endeavor financially, but if it has helped the NFL and the sports world to just be more mainstream, then I'm certainly for that. And I don't shy away from it, or I don't shun it or think it's terrible. But in general, if I had to say, like, am I a big sports bettor, gambler? No. And I would obviously just say, like, unless you can take your money out, probably stay away.
That's why they always say that Vegas has the tall buildings and you live in a 1 or 2 story house.
Exactly.
Right? Like Vegas always wins. On that topic. So when you're watching football, I'm on kind of the same corner as you. I hate fantasy football. I hate the way people watch football because of fantasy football.
Of it, yeah.
I'm with my buddies. Oh, I need 3 yards from this guy, or this guy didn't score the touchdown. And I'm like, that's not what I watch football for. I don't watch it for, video game numbers and who scores, because that's also random in the grand scheme of the game. And like when you've been a part of, a coaching staff and a game plan, like, I hate fantasy football. So we're kind of on the same page there. When you're watching a game, what are you watching for? If it's like a non-Bills game, like, are you watching it? Do you have your scout hat on? Do you have your work hat on? Are there games you just kind of unplug and you're a fan? Like take us through that.
Another good question. This is a very good interview so far.
Thank you.
I would say most of the time, and it's funny that you asked that, because it's like I'm kind of working on myself when it comes to watching a game, because being an NFL draft analyst for my job, and I do a little bit, or I've started to do a fair amount of just normal general NFL analysis in season. But then from like December through April, it is just all NFL draft. I mean, I'm obviously kind of, chiming in here and there on the NFL playoffs, but because of that, college games and then other NFL games that aren't the Bills, or even watching the Bills, I kind of have a tendency now to watch it with a scouting hat on. Like, I loved Dorian Williams in this past year's draft class. Like, he was my number 2 linebacker. The Bills pick him. So when he's been in there, I've been like just watching him, like zeroing in on him on the field. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is a football game. I need to remember that I just love the game in general. So I've been trying to do that, to not say, hey, look, there's the, UB edge rusher Malcolm Kuntz on the Raiders, who's playing really well and playing ahead of the first round pick that they just selected at edge rusher, and just watching one player, because that's obviously what you have to do when you're scouting. So that's something that I've been working on, that unplugging and just saying, hey, look, I'm just going to watch this game and enjoy it. It's obviously a little easier to do when it's not the Bills, but there's just so many guys that I watch that there's favorites or guys who I didn't like that I like to zero in on. So that's been something the last 2 years, like since the end of the pandemic, that I'm like, I got to come out of this and just enjoy football and not watch individual players on every play.
Good for you. That's a challenge. I'm lucky enough to do another podcast for Cover One called "What Happened on Saturdays" with Marlon Kerner. And Marlon and I are huge college football fans, and I mean, I probably love college football even more than the NFL. So, do you watch college football differently than the NFL? Are you able?
I do.
To take your scouting hat off?
Yeah. So a lot of people, when I get asked, or even just friends, say like, "Oh, do you just sit in front of the TV from noon until midnight to watch a Pac-12 game every Saturday?" And that used to be the case, but fortunately for me and kind of anyone else that's a huge college football fan, the advancements of YouTube TV, where there's unlimited DVR, and almost every game gets put on YouTube right after. Because when I'm scouting, I obviously don't have the time to just sit there and watch an entire game. You're kind of getting those cut-ups. And so I kind of watch it and take it in that way. But if I'm not doing things with the family, if there is free time on a Saturday, I'll definitely be sitting down and watching whatever games are on. So it's certainly, when I was a kid with my dad, that was kind of what I think shaped me as a football fan, as an NFL draft fan, that we would have those marathon days on Saturday watching from the noon games all the way through the night games. But now it's, again, something else that's similar to the NFL, that when I'm not in that December through April mode of like, all right, I need to watch this linebacker, then this corner, then this wide receiver, that I just like to enjoy college football because like you, I like it just as much as the NFL.
I may or may not have last weekend when my wife was in Pittsburgh with her friends sat in my basement from noon until about 1 a.m.
Hey.
I can't confirm nor
Nothing to
deny
be
it.
ashamed of. Yeah.
It was great. It took me back to before we had kids and before you're married and before, obligations come on a Saturday.
Yep.
I grounded out from college game day all the way through some Pac-12. I think it was it was Hawaii and Fresno State. I'm not sure who it was, but man. So, another question along those lines. I think people are always interested in what makes, your perspective or your observations different than the quote unquote average fan. Can you kind of take people through this December through April period you talk about? What does your day look like? Because I can tell already, you put the work in, you're part of the grind. The Cover One guys are part of the grind, and you get all this feedback on Twitter and all other social media. Well, you don't know what you're talking about, from people that might have watched the guy twice play for a quarter. Maybe just share with people how much time it is and maybe what a typical day would look like for you when you're in the grind.
Or they watch.
And I mean, I'm not a big person to argue on Twitter, X, whatever we're calling it these days, with someone that, like you're saying, that says, hey, like, you don't know anything about that quarterback. And it's never, but like, if I ever do respond, it's not even coming, like, I'm hoping to not come across condescending. It's just that, hey, look, like, this has been my job to watch CJ Stroud every single throw that he's made and take notes and blah, blah, blah. So a lot of other people that are saying, hey, he's not any good, he's an Ohio State quarterback, whatever the case may be, let's just use him for an example. It's like, well, maybe you're going to ultimately be right. Maybe I'm wrong. But at this point, before, let's say, April's draft, I was the one that literally for my job had to do all the homework. So standard day, let's say it's in late February, the Super Bowl's over. In the morning, I work through each position group. I start with quarterbacks early on, and I do that on purpose. I do that because I always found it silly how certainly all positions, but definitely quarterbacks, the games end, the bowl games are over. And then from January until April, quarterbacks move up and down the board, the consensus board. And I'm like, what is happening? Like Johnny Manziel gets a lot of buzz and Baker Mayfield flies up the board over Josh Allen and over Lamar Jackson. So I watch those first. So in the morning, it'll be, let's say I'm on quarterbacks. I'll watch as many games as I can. I'll just obviously have a list of who, we all believe to be the top guys. I work my way down. And then later in the day, in the afternoon is when whatever my obligation is, that I have to write one article per day for CBS Sports throughout the week. So I used to have it the other way, but then I would get at night and I'd get just sitting there staring, watching film. You can get a little tired and kind of fall asleep a little bit. So last year, I actually started doing it that way, where I'd watch film in the morning when I was wide awake and then write those articles later at night. Was a lot easier to stay focused when you're writing as opposed to just watching a football game. So yeah, and to watch 275 to over 300 prospects every year. And you guys mentioned that I founded the Scouting Gradebook. It's just the system, the grading system that I created, I think 4 years ago now. That's just how I plug in all of my grades for all the players. And there's a weighted formula that spits out a number, because I was realizing after my first year at CBS, I was like, how do you rank a big board? Like, how do you put a corner over a wide receiver? I had to do it where every position, there's 5 skill and talent categories. There's the same formula for each. I have weights, like, for example, accuracy for quarterbacks carries the heaviest weight to me. Arm strength is second. Athleticism is up there as well. And it spits out a number for me. And then that number gets auto-populated into the big board, so that I don't have to say, hey, is that number 2 corner ahead of that number 3 receiver? Just the numbers all align. So that helps me build, or it does build my big board for me that I use for CBS Sports.
Yeah, we've talked to a lot of former players, and we always ask them what draft day was like for them, even if they ended up being an undrafted player, how they got to the team. And they take us kind of through that journey after their senior year, talk about big games that they had, and what Josh always asked them, when they kind of knew that they're going into the NFL. But they also talk about the combine. And it's so interesting to hear guys talk about some of the variables that went into whether or not they had a good combine, if they knew that they had a great one and kind of surprised themselves even, or they were real disappointed in themselves, and to whatever, extent that stock is put into the combine, they've talked about just kind of a crapshoot it is.
Yeah, so I think I factor in the combine quite a bit. I mean, film to me is the most important, but to just say that, hey, the combine doesn't matter at all, I think is kind of silly. It's just another layer of information that would be foolish to just completely ignore. But I mean, I could try to rack my brain. There are countless amount of players that even I've scouted since I started at CBS, August of 2017, that their combines don't really align with what you see on film. Like T. Higgins, who the Bills are going to play in week 9, he did not look like someone that was going to test as poorly as he did. And there were some rumors in that, 2020 draft class that he didn't have like the means to have this, personal trainer that would coach him on how to run the fastest 40 and the fastest 3 cone. So had he gotten that, he probably would have tested better, and he probably would have been a first round pick instead of the first pick in the second round or second pick in the first round or second round that year. So you do have to always factor in that, hey, maybe these guys aren't necessarily, like certain guys are getting trained at Exos by their agent, kind of floating them money, and they're really maximizing all of their athleticism at the combine. And some guys just decide not to do it, or don't have the means to do it, or don't want to do it. So that's why, again, I still think film is the most important. And I do think with the advancement of next gen stats and the chips in the shoulder pads, that it seems as though teams are more looking at, true game speed, game leaping ability over the combine as we move forward. I just hope that data eventually becomes available to the public and for analysts like myself, because all we have right now is the combine.
The combine always reminded me of like the SAT, like it was kind of this one day standardized, some guys prepare for it, I also wonder if NIL maybe will level the playing field for guys who don't have the resources. Who are we talking to? Was it Don Beebe that didn't have track shoes?
Yeah, he had
exactly
boat shoes, and he still set the record.
He had the combine record for years and years and years.
He could still fly,
on with floppy shoes. Back to a question earlier, I give you a lot of credit. The Cover One guys a lot of credit. I see the banter back and forth on Twitter, and you don't come across as preachy, even though you are doing the work. Sports and football, especially, when I was there, it always struck me that you don't go into somebody else's line of business, and you don't question how the person's running the convenience store or how Wegmans, stocks the produce. But everybody obviously has an opinion and passion on football. When you're doing your analysis, when you're scouting, when you're writing, do you ever feel pressure? Like if you've got a guy, Dorian Williams per se, and you've got him way higher than consensus. Like, what is that like for you? Do you always trust your eyes? Or are there times where you're like, maybe I'm wrong?
It's definitely something that is a challenge in my job. And if anyone that is listening has followed me on Twitter or at CBS or at any of my other stops in the past, know that I'm kind of, I don't want to say I'm known for it, but I definitely don't shy away from having a different opinion, especially when it comes to the draft. I think in general, this is no disrespect to anyone else in the industry, it's very easy to fall into the echo chamber and to not be different, because that's just smooth sailing. You're not going to get any controversy. Everyone kind of feels the same about Johnny Manziel, and then that's it. Or I guess he's probably not a good example because he was pretty polarizing, but everyone feels the same way about Caleb Williams. I could be someone, maybe someone at ESPN, at you guys could say, you know what, I just do not like Caleb Williams at all. You're opening yourself up to a lot of criticism because most of the people obviously like him. So throughout the years, to me, it's, and I certainly am never doing it, never loving someone like Dorian Williams, or not liking Gregory Rousseau. That's one that I got wrong. Doing it to be like a Skip Bayless and to just get a charge out of people. And I don't think that if the three of us or any of our listeners were to watch Caleb Williams or Dorian Williams or Gregory Rousseau, I don't think we would come away with different observations. It's just, what do you weigh like heavier than me? Like, what is more important to you than it is to me at defensive end or at linebacker or at corner? And that's where I think there's a bigger disparity, that even going back to the 2018 draft class, like everyone, it seemed like, certainly the Browns and the Jets, they did not weigh athleticism nearly enough in arm strength. I mean, Baker Mayfield, Josh Rosen, Sam Darnold were nowhere in the same stratosphere as Josh Allen when it came to his athleticism, and Lamar Jackson. So it's like, I think that's where it would be crazy that if all of us watching film all had the same top 32 big board. So I never shy away from that. I think it's good. And I tend to kind of gravitate toward those analysts who do have a kind of different viewpoint, because I'm like, okay, at least that person is not just following along with everyone else. They're giving their true, genuine opinion. And that's kind of where I don't want to say hang my hat, but where I thought getting into this industry, I don't want to just echo what Todd McShay and what Mel Kiper say, for as much as I respect them. And a lot of times they are right, and their consensus big boards are correct for the most part. I wanted to just give my own genuine opinions on these players every year.
Yeah, being at the Bills, I work with a lot of scouts and friends with a lot of scouts, and I was in certain meetings, but I wasn't always, in scouting meetings per se. But they would always tell me how they went, and the GM or the scouting director would always call on the younger scouts first, because they knew they would get their most honest opinion. Yeah. If they asked the older ones first, and the younger ones who are trying to make their mark hear that, they'll do, like you say, try to mimic them so that they don't appear to be contradicting the more seasoned scouts. But interesting perspective. I don't want to take you away from this, but it's a big deal that you're at CBS. What is their ask of you? What is the arrangement, to the extent that you can talk about, what you do for them and each week? And
Yes. So kind of the backstory goes that as I was doing all this writing, Bills, some general NFL for Bleacher Report, Fox Sports, Buffalo Rumblings, the awesome SB Nation site that Brian Galliford started, Matt Warren. I'm not sure who the editor-in-chief is now, but in doing that, like I said, I made sure that I wasn't only writing about the Bills, and I got really into the draft 2014 through 2017, like watched as many guys as I could, did position rankings, and I went to the 2015, what was the Ronald Darby draft? 2015, right? 2015 Combine. And I had done some freelance writing for CBS. Like I pitched to them this analytics idea for Thursday Night Football, kind of connected with an editor, just found him on Twitter, then guessed his email. Kind of the rest was history. At that Combine, he said, "Hey, I've seen what you've done a lot with the NFL draft, and we're about, in the next year or so, we're going to run out of our contract is going to be up with a few of their kind of outsourced NFL draft writers. So just keep doing what you're doing." So I'm like, okay, whatever, like I'm going to. And then in 2017, 2 years later, they're like, "Hey, this contract is up. We want to hire someone to be an NFL draft writer." And again, it's kind of ironic. It always ties back to the Bills that was the Josh Allen draft year. So from December through April, like I said, all NFL draft. And where the young player analyst comes in is that after those first 2 or 3 drafts, 2018, 2019, I still wanted to be even more valuable. That's kind of been, I've never been complacent. I don't ever want to be complacent in my career. And I thought, I don't want to just be an NFL draft writer for them, because huge traffic, a lot of attention in those winter months leading into the draft, but not as much during the season. And I kind of pitched them and said, why don't, during the season when, a mock draft or a big board is not going to do as well in September, October, November, why don't I write about these young players that I intimately scouted, that I know all about, and kind of track their development, or guys I missed, guys I didn't, players that are entering a contract year that should get an extension or haven't gotten the opportunity with their first team that should be traded for, things like that. So that kind of made me, I'm hoping, a little bit more valuable for CBS, that they said, okay, instead of you writing draft stuff in September and October, you can then just do general NFL with kind of a lean toward the younger players that you just got finished scouting the last few years.
That's, I love that idea.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason that I started, following your work and enjoy it so much is that, as a college football fan, and then as somebody who's, studies and the draft, a lot of times you lose touch with these players that looked at, you've scouted, because they'll go to the Bears or they'll go to the Rams, and you just don't see them very much. You're not in practice. A lot of them don't play quite a bit, their first, second year. So I really appreciate you found kind of a soft spot in the market, and I commend you for that, because that's an underserved market where you read about these guys, third, fourth, fifth round guys who then get completely lost every Sunday,
for sure.
And that's a definite need, and I think people appreciate the follow up from that.
Yeah, I gotta ask you too, Ronald Darby. That seems like kind of a random name to remember. I have a story about Ronald Darby, but what made you think of him?
Oh, because I was trying to think of what year, because that was the first combine that I attended, and I remember, and it's crazy, even since 2015, that combine, the media room was inside Lucas Oil in this, decent sized room. It was kind of had like a cafeteria, or I don't think it was a cafeteria, but there was like a spot to eat, pretty small. And they had the players just come around these 4 or 5 tables. And I remember sitting next to Ronald Darby, in part of his interview, and then the Bills picked him 2 months later. So I just was remembering that meeting that the CBS editor was at that same combine as Ronald Darby.
What's your Ronald Darby story?
Well, we were going to London, and I was responsible for collecting and giving the players their passports back. And as we were landing, it was still dark. It was an overnight flight. And it's kind of the thing that we underestimated, like how hard it would be, because they were flatbeds. And I was kind of in a hurry because I would need to be the first person off the plane to go collect them again at Heathrow. And there was Ronald Darby was awake sitting there, but there was a player next to him, and I couldn't tell who it was because he had like a hoodie on. He was sleeping. I'm like, who's this? And he told me, I said, oh, can you just give him his passport? Can I give it to you and you can give it to him? And he's like, no, man.
Really?
He said, no, I don't. I'm sorry. I can't be responsible for it. I thought he was kidding at first.
Right.
And he's like, no. Oh, okay. So I had to.
And for you're responsible for like 100 of them.
Yeah.
And he won't touch somebody else's. That's
so
funny.
I had to wake the player up and be like, hey. And then,
do you remember who it was?
I don't.
Okay.
But I remember Darby's comment because I was like, all right. Anyway,
So
that's really funny. You've been really generous with your time here, Chris. Before we let you go, basically maybe just a reaction to the current situation for the Bills.
Sure.
Obviously the trade deadline yesterday. What can you tell us about the guy that they got yesterday, and maybe going forward for the rest of the year? Rasul Douglas, it popped out of my head for a second. Where do you think we go?
So I'll start with him. I think Douglas is the exact type of corner that the Bills needed. That with Kyer Elam being a healthy scratch, there were some rumors that he was maybe going to be traded. To get someone that is big, 6'2", 210 pounds, long arms, to be that just classic outside cornerback who excels in zone coverage. He's a pretty good tackler. He's played a lot of football, played in a bunch of different schemes in Philly and Carolina, and then most recently in Green Bay. There's some kind of confusion if he's 28 or 29 years old, but he's not up there in age yet, quite yet. I think it was a great trade for the Bills. They didn't have to give up a ton. They get the 5th round pick and trade a 3rd that they'll probably get back for losing Tremaine Edmonds next year. So I really like that decision. I'm glad that the Bills didn't just go into the trade deadline and say, hey, look, we're 5-3. We just got the win on Thursday night. We feel really good about ourselves. There was a clear need, especially at the depth at the cornerback spot. And I think Douglas is going to be a starter sooner rather than later. I know they like to kind of use that platoon system where Dane Jackson's out there. They love Christian Benford, but to add him to a group that looked really deep at the beginning of the season, and then after Tre'Davious White's injury, and then, of course, without Elam really developing, it suddenly was not very deep at corner. And I think it's important to have good cornerbacks in today's NFL. As for the Bills, I still think they do a great job with their analytics. They are throwing the football a lot. We're starting to see Josh Allen spread the ball out a little bit more like he did against the Buccaneers, and which is not surprising that it's taken some time. I mean, Dalton Kincaid's a rookie. We have a lot of new pieces. Even Khalil Shakir being only in his 2nd season, it's not surprising that it hasn't taken, or that it has taken him almost half the season to become someone that I think can be a fixture of this offense. The down the stretch schedule is pretty tough, but it's tough for a lot of the other teams in the AFC. as long as the offensive line continues to play well, the defensive line kind of starts to ramp up a little bit as Von Miller comes back, and there's Josh Allen under center. I think the Bills are a legitimate, justifiable Super Bowl contender when you have that set up in Buffalo.
We talked to Luke Russert on Monday, and
yeah,
I liked his. I liked. Thank you. I liked his little tag at the end. You got to get to 11 wins, and I think, we're so conditioned as people who've watched the NFL forever that you need the 1 seed or you need the 2 seed. Don and I talked a little bit about that, about the importance of the bye. And now with like 7 teams in the playoffs, it feels like to me 2 through 7. It's not that it doesn't matter. You just got to get in, right? You got to get in. Home field advantage. Sometimes the Bills play better, on the road and when the weather is bad here. So it just feels like get on a roll, get set, and just get into the playoffs. Just get into the tournament, and then you never know. It's a roll of the dice from there.
Yeah, one thing I'll say on that is like in 2019 when they had to go to Houston, I mean, they were certainly in command of that game and kind of blew the lead in the second half. That team, it felt like, man, they needed to be home to win a playoff game. Now,
fair point.
Like you mentioned, the Bills can beat anyone anywhere. And I don't think any team is going to be like, oh, yay, we have to face Josh Allen and the Bills at home in the playoffs. Like the Bills can beat any team, any location. So it matters. I think the 1 seed to get the bye is a gigantic luxury to just not have to play that game. I mean, the Bills had some injuries in that wild card round against the Dolphins last year that, Daquan Jones goes out and ultimately they're playing a practice squad player at defensive tackle against Joe Burrow in the snow. Wasn't really the best situation for the Bills going into that game. Beyond that, like you mentioned, I think you hit the nail on the head. 2 through 7, we've seen upsets. We've seen teams that look great as the 2 seed lose to the 7, to the 6. So as long as the Bills are in there and they're playing solid football, like we saw from that, 2021 season, that they were 11-6. They lost 9-6 in November and then lost the next week in Tampa. So to lose those games to Jacksonville and Tampa, things looked kind of bleak. And then by the end of the season, they were on a roll and the offense and the defense were totally clicking. So as long as I think what Luke said, to get to 11 wins and playing your best football in January, we've all kind of realized it's crazy. In Buffalo, it was like, just do anything to get to 9-7 and get in. Now
in the hunt.
Yes, be in that little graphic just off the playoff bracket. To now it's, hey, whatever happens in the regular season, if you're not the 1 seed, it's fine. Just be playing your best football, by the first
and be healthy and be
be
as relatively healthy as you possibly can be.
For sure.
And frankly, that 1 seed, recently in the AFC, a lot of it's been the product of the Chiefs just playing in a bad division. And there's a structural advantage to playing the AFC West teams twice a year.
Right.
Josh McDaniels just got fired last night at like 2 a.m. or whatever, and that whole division's a mess. We're gonna do the 2-minute warning with you here, Chris. Okay. You wouldn't have seen it because we've had Luke on before, but we do 10 rapid fire questions in 2 minutes or less, just to give people another look at your character, your personality before we let you go. So Don, go ahead.
Okay, your most interesting place to watch a Bills game or an NFL game?
I'll go back to my early 20s, McFadden's in New York City. I don't know if it's still the Bills Backers Bar, but
I've been there for a Bills game.
So I was there for do you guys remember when they picked off Mark Sanchez like 5 times? They were bad. They were like 0-4, maybe 08, 09. I was there for that. It was absolutely wild. Absolutely wild. So I would go with McFadden's in New York City.
Okay. 3 people, dead or alive, you'd want to have dinner with.
3 people. How about let's go. Brandon Beane would be pretty cool right now, just to be able, just as the orchestrator of this Bills team. It would be fun to be able to pick his brain for a while. Brandon Beane. Does it have to be football related?
No. Anyone alive or dead? We've had some interesting answers to this question over the last year and a half.
Man, that's tough. You know who I'll go with, which I don't need to go off on a tangent on this, but I'm a big, and maybe you've heard this on WGR when I've been on, I'm a big proponent of like cold plunging, cold immersion, like purposely going in cold water. Wim Hof, if you guys have seen him or followed him on Instagram, on social media, he's run marathons with his shirt off in cold temperatures. Just to get his philosophy would be really, really cool. I got to think of someone who's passed away. There's got to be
former like NFL guy, like a legend, or somebody growing up, as you're a fan of. We've had everybody from Jesus to, gosh, man,
Abe Lincoln.
Abe Lincoln, and obviously those standard answers, but then some kind of off the wall ones too.
How about John F. Kennedy Jr.? Just that he, being that he was such a well-liked president, and obviously what happened to him was terrible. My parents have told me how well-liked he was as a president, and it seems like in this day and age, there's no president that's that well-liked. So just to be able to sit down with him and get how he was able to kind of galvanize an entire country with, the whole two-party system, that would be really interesting too.
Yeah, I read one of that Bill O'Reilly's series, Killing Kennedy. That was one of the best ones, actually. Yeah,
Interesting.
Really good. You're entering an arena. You're a big deal. Dry ice. What's your entrance song?
Ooh, I would say Enter Sandman by Metallica, probably. Just listening to that, or seeing those videos at like Virginia Tech, I think that's always just like sends those chills through your spine. That would probably be mine.
That's a bucket list
company.
That's a Mariano Rivera. Enough with you and your Yankee fandom. It's
gross.
Yeah,
that too.
It's gross. That's a bucket list college stadium.
Me too.
For me. Got to see it.
I want that, and I want to be at West Virginia when they sing Country Roads.
Yes,
that would be fun.
Yes, absolutely right. Best concert you've ever been to?
Ooh, so it was about 7 years ago, and my wife and I just saw her recently in Buffalo. Fleetwood Mac in January of 2016 at the Sabres Arena. Marveled at how much they sounded studio quality, and at the time they were in their late 60s. The whole band was still together. Big Fleetwood Mac guy, and they were just awesome that night.
I just have been watching some interviews with Stevie Nicks. She's brilliant. She is really, really smart. Talk about constructing an album. Good stuff. Let's see. Your favorite Buffalo.
Sorry, I think I lost you guys there for a second.
Oh, that's okay. What's your favorite Buffalo restaurant, and what do you get there?
Oh, okay. This is like the most stock answer ever. Bar Bill, by far. I mean, if I can get to East Aurora and go to the original, I do. But there's a Bar Bill North in Clarence on Main Street. I do 10 either medium or medium hot, and 10 of the classic Cajun honey butter barbecue. And what I think is their medium is better than any other medium wing that I've gotten. There's so many about the specialty wings or so much hoopla about them. I think their mediums are as good as any wings that I've ever had in my life.
Do you have a favorite college football team?
Michigan Wolverines, and that is a random one. My dad kind of I think he told me that he hated Woody Hayes. So he's like, he liked Michigan in like the 70s and 80s whenever he coached.
Want to punch him?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like he's punching Clemson players. Yeah, so I mean, but I will say my brother-in-law is a huge Florida State fan randomly. So I've kind of gravitated toward them as well. What's been good for me with college football is like I've always been able to just watch from afar. There's not a team that I'm overly invested in. I mean, as a kid, it was Michigan, but now into my adulthood, I just love the sport and just love those Saturdays in the fall.
Well, you're welcome to come on our show. What happened on Saturday with Marlon Curtin. Cool. Now, being a Michigan fan, I'm going to have to clear it with him first. Being an Ohio State captain and his puck guys. So go ahead, Don.
Can you drive a stick shift?
No, I cannot. And there was one night and with my friends where they all were shocked that I couldn't do it. And I don't know how, looking back, I did this, drove from my house to a McDonald's that was about 2 miles away. And it was like the most scared I've ever been in my life. They were trying to tell me how to, I just could not do it. My dad never taught me, and I just never had a stick shift car. But a lot of my friends can. I'm like one of the few who can't.
Well, we'll do 3 more here. What is the most annoying NFL fan base to engage with on social media?
That's a good question. Again, I don't really get in those Twitter fights. I mean, maybe when I first started, I did a little bit, and I realized there's just kind of pointless. I would say no. I was going to say the Dolphins, but that's only been lately.
Yeah.
Maybe Pittsburgh Steelers.
Interesting.
Because like I think they're pretty that fan base and this is, just generalizing, which is usually not the smartest thing to do. They're very smart. They're passionate about football, but like so much so about their Steelers that any negative thing whatsoever gets taken way too seriously.
There's a lot of entitlement in Steelers.
Because they've been good for so long. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, what do they call themselves? Like Titletown or no? That's Green Bay. No, but the Steeler fans are. Yeah. So two more here. Doug, go.
Your favorite cartoon growing up as a kid?
Favorite cartoon
or show?
Probably Hey Arnold, and maybe it was because his head was the shape of a football. He had an awesome bed. He had an awesome bedroom, like on the like in the attic of his house that was all glass. So it was probably him. I think we just lost my camera.
We lost your camera, which is kind of ironic for the last question here, which we're batting about 40-60. What do you think, Don? You think he's gonna be able to do it or no?
He doesn't. We don't bet. Remember?
Oh, right. All right, Chris. Can you sing us 5 seconds of the Valparaiso fight song?
I instantly wanted to go to the Michigan to Hail to the Victors. I can't. I remember that everyone would hold 2 fingers up to make like 2 V's when they would sing it, but I don't remember. If I remembered it, I would sing it. I'm not bashful about trying to sing it. How does it
Fair enough.
I want to say it's the same. This might be wrong, but I want to say it's the same tune as the Wisconsin theme song, but I don't remember the lyrics. So I apologize to any Valparaiso people listening. But
well, there's your homework. There's your homework from us, Chris. You get
the next time
out the Valparaiso fight song.
It was insightful about the V's.
Yes, and maybe if we have you on again during the off season, or if you do come on with Marlon and I. We'll check up on you again there.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for your time, Chris.